Parenting Dads.
Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about perinatal fatherhood. Do you feel like a father right now? Let's try an exercise. Is your partner nearby? Put your hand on her belly. Close your eyes and picture your baby. Picture its little curled up hands, her tiny little ears and his little feet maybe. From around 18 to 20 weeks, they can hear your voice. A great way of building your connection early is to hum, sing, or tell a story to the belly. When they are born, they will immediately recognize your voice.
They only have 25% of their brain formed by the time they're born. And then they start, once they've escaped from that little pelvis, then they start to pile on neural tissue at a fantastic rate. 1,000 to 10,000 connections a second is being made in their little brains, and their actual brain weight doubles in the year after they're born. And it's all connections. And the connections relate to obviously genetics, but it also relates to how they're being brought up and how they are being managed and how their behavior is being reinforced or inhibited. And that is where parenting, modern parenting, comes into its own, because we now realize that how babies are wired up for a lifetime of happiness or not depends on what happens in those early months and years when they are just laying down all this basic stuff. In the first year and beyond, but especially in their first year, they lay down their emotional intelligence. That is life secure? Am I loved? Do my parents, are they reliable people? And do they love me? And does that have conditions attached to it? Do they only love me if this or if that, or do they love me unconditionally? And that stuff is the neural substance laid down in their first year.
Your life is about to change and it will never be the same. As with any change, it has its drawbacks and its rewards. There will be things that you will miss, and there will be things that will bring new awareness and joy. So what will you miss the most? Is there any way you can prepare yourself for this? What does science say about fatherhood?
You guys are going to go through hormonal changes. Your testosterone is going to drop by about 30%, and your prolactin, that nurturing paternal hormone, is going to go up by 30%.
New fathers experienced increased oxytocin. If you hold your baby for 10 minutes and your partner also held your baby for 10 minutes, your oxytocin buzz lasts longer.
Dad's got the baby parked on his chest and on his bare chest. Remember, you have oxytocin receptors in your chest, and babies are designed like a socket and a plug to receive your chest sensory organs in order to get all that oxytocin going, both in baby and in father or mother.
Your testosterone goes down to make you more protective of the little one by increasing your affection and sensitivity. Your cortisol goes down when you're holding your baby, which is another way of saying you feel less stressed. And again, these effects last longer for blokes than for mums. Prolactin, which was always thought to be the hormone of motherhood, and it's closely associated with breastfeeding, is also present in us. And it is particularly pronounced when we hear a baby cry. Biologically and at a primal level, nature has provided new fathers with a hormonal landscape that helps your baby survive. Fathers who actively care for babies or who are close to pregnant women experience changes in hormones linked to trust, sensitivity and love. We even get hits of dopamine when we play with our little ones.
Nurturing, the cuddling, the touching, the holding, the reassurance during their first year. As they move into their second year, that's where the male energy kicks in. The first year is the emotional intelligence, which is mostly posited in the right side, the right cerebral hemisphere, which is the emotional brain, if you want to think in, sort of buzz terms. The left side, that is your cognitive development and your executive functions and your regression, kicks in year 2. And that's when dads come into their own. because it's left-sided. You know, the idea that women are Venus and men are Mars, all this fundamental, you know, buzzy difference. But there's an essence to that, which is men tend to think left brain. They tend to think logically, which is why dads try and fix things, whereas women tend to deal with things holistically. In a baby's second year, they need to learn that logic and how cognitive things work. They also need control of their aggression, especially little boys. And dads are the ones to do that. And the little boys are watching their dads all the time. Now, during their first year, dads can start to feel really irrelevant, because every time the baby hurts himself, he rushes off to his mum and gets a cuddle, pushes dad out of the way and wants a hug. Fine. It happens second year, third year, it can almost happen in reverse. And we look at the behavior of mothers and fathers with their babies of either gender, and you find that mothers tend to keep their babies close and want to hold them and not let them explore. But the fathers in their second year and beyond like to see how far the little boy will go. And then they will look after them. They'll keep them safe, but they won't keep them necessarily as close. And they have a very physical way of looking after their babies, which is a wonderful thing for the baby to experience. These two ways of loving, one's the cuddling and the nurturing, the other one's being thrown up into the air and caught. And that is important for the complete development of a baby's psyche. And I won't say especially girls, because especially boys, because girls need it as well. And in fact, there's no doubt, the data is in, that the presence of fathers in the house, in the home when girls are born, the presence means that they have better cognitive functioning, they have more emotional resilience, and they have better self-esteem. And they look on their dad as a model from which they judge all men in the future. So you've got to be really careful about the way you interact with your partner. And I'm a real fan of overt affection in front of babies, so that they know that women should be treated with love and affection and gentleness. And boys especially, but boys, of course, need that aggression. They're churning through all this testosterone, which needs to be brought under control, and only dads can do that really effectively. The male energy can do that effectively.
A crying baby will lead to a fall in testosterone in a father who has experienced the changes brought on by earlier nurturing, leading to a greater sensitivity to the baby's needs. However, a man who has not been so conditioned will experience the opposite, an increase in testosterone with a greater risk of inappropriate aggressive response.
I encourage dads to bath with the baby, which is really nice. Change the baby's nappy, burp your baby after a feed, and be a part of that love bubble and that huge rush of oxytocin that comes in those first few weeks.
The more hands-on care you provide, the greater will be your attachment, and you'll be rewarded by nature with protective hormones flooding your system.
Babies like to stay close, and they like to be reminded of being in the womb. So they love the heartbeat. That's why we tend to hold babies on the left. We tend to pat babies at maternal heart rate, because that's what they're used to. You can sing to them. And when we talk to babies, we talk in motherese, which is very high frequency, because that's what babies are used to. Their ears attuned to the higher frequencies. And they like the smell of their mum. They love nuzzling against their mother especially, and very soon they start to recognize dad's smell as well.
It's not only hormones that help us to be better dads. Our brains are also hardwired to connect with our little ones. Caring for infants is known to light up areas of the brain associated with empathy and cognition. The emotional empathy brain network enables an automatic understanding of the baby's mental state, allowing us to feel and experience the physical pain or emotional distress of the baby. The socio-cognitive brain network enables us to infer our infant's mental state from behaviour and helps us predict infant needs and plan future caregiving activities. If you're supportive of their mother, it turns out that the mother can bond more responsibly and sensitively to the needs of your infant. So, what are some of the things to consider during early fatherhood to ensure you get off to a good start?
I've always said to parents, remember, they don't look it, but babies are tough as old boots.
Again, these are just some suggestions for things that we found useful, so take what resonates and blaze your own trail for the rest. What are your key roles when you get home? How can you give your partner the opportunity to spend as much time bonding and attaching to baby as possible? Just a heads up, newborn feeding can take up to 6 hours a day. For an indeterminate period of time, your partner will be recovering from the birth. Your role as the supportive birthing dad is to do all you can to help facilitate her recovery. Psychologist Dr. Oscar Saralish has coined the term postpartum depletion to describe the exhaustion that some mothers experience after birth.
The postnatal period is absolutely exhausting for everybody, but particularly for a breastfeeding mum. So, I think it's really important for dads to be aware that as tired as they are, their partner is probably even more tired. And so she's going to need your support like she's never needed your support before. In terms of supporting her, the sort of things that you can do is adjust your expectations of what she's going to be able to achieve. Looking after a baby and feeding a baby is 24/7 at the beginning. And so anything else like housework or meal preparation or tidying up is on top of that. She's not going to be able to do both for some period of time. So just expect that baby care, basic baby care is her prime role for at least the first couple of weeks, and that she's going to need help with just about everything else.
If this is the case for your family, then your level of sensitive support has to be amplified.
To look after the mother is to look after the whole family unit, because she is the lifeblood for the child and well-being of that child. And if that child is distressed, upset, not well, not being comforted, not responded to, because mum is too fatigued or too depleted, to avoid depletion, it is really important that we have not just a birth plan, I call it a birth preferences sheet, but a birth plan, but a postpartum plan as well.
For the first few months after baby comes, it's worth being aware of postnatal depression and anxiety symptoms, not only in your partner, but also in yourself.
Understanding the difference between the baby blues, which, as I mentioned, it's really limited to being very emotional, teary, upset, but it's only likely to last a couple of days and will go away on its own. And that's very different from depression, for example, which is likely to occur technically from 1 month postpartum, so 1 month after having a baby or any time after that. And it usually consists of a number of other symptoms. So not only feeling sad or down or upset, not able to get through the day, negative thinking, negative feeling, really inability to function and get on and function from day to day as you normally would.
You'll find more information on this on the resources page.
I think this is true around emotional and mental health more broadly in the perinatal period, both during pregnancy, around the time of birth, and in the postnatal period. By equipping yourselves with good quality information about mental health conditions, what they look like, what they feel like, what treatments are effective. Knowledge is really power here, and getting information and support early is very important. Often there's a big focus on the baby, or the focus on we should be able to cope with this, and it's just part of becoming a parent, so it'll pass on its own. And we know from our own research that up to 74% of women alone who experienced antenatal or postnatal depression and anxiety did not seek help until they reached crisis point. So that means it's going to take a lot longer for those people to get treatment and recover than if they got that help early. So it's identifying signs early and getting help early. And that also applies to dads, I think, as well, who particularly quite often feel like they've got to be the rock, they've got to be the strong ones, they've got to hold it together. But of course, they are also at risk of mental health problems at this time. And by identifying symptoms, not only in their partner and supporting them to get treatment, but also in themselves, that's going to be far better for the whole family unit rather than waiting till things, because we've got all these other things happening at the same time. We might be struggling with emotional mental health problems, put on top of that, new adjustments, dealing with work and family commitments, new responsibilities, a little bit of sleep deprivation thrown in there for good measure, a crying baby, and you can see why it's very easy to de-escalate or crumble quickly. So early intervention and getting support early is really, really important to prevent mental health conditions becoming more severe or even occurring in the first place by building up good support networks and putting good, strong foundations and equipping yourself with knowledge and understanding about the different tools and strategies to look after your own emotional and mental health.
What are the extended family dynamics in your situation? Do you have in-laws or parents around? Are they coming to stay? Sisters or aunties or other family members that will be around immediately following birth and perhaps for the first few months? Depending on the relationship you have with family and friends, this can be a godsend or a nightmare. It might be a good idea to have a chat with your partner prior to birth about strategies of dealing with family during this time, particularly if the birth hasn't gone as smoothly as hoped.
So you set boundaries. Boundaries are going to be really critical to everyone getting on a lot better and having more sleep and more rest and feeling more connected and happier. So that means, not having visitors for a certain amount of time. You might keep to that golden month, they call it in Chinese medicine, or in yoga, we call it the first 40 days. That first 40 days or that third trimester, so that fourth trimester, that is critical to her immunity and health for the next 40 years. So that is a period of rest.
Can you speak openly with family and friends? Courageous conversations in those early weeks will give them a good idea of how they can be supportive and what you expect of them. During this postpartum time, it's important to be conscious of your partner's identity shift that comes with the new arrival. She has suddenly gone from me to we, and her entire universe now contains a tiny bundle that she likely feels entirely responsible for. I personally don't think that it's possible for us blokes to fully understand the gravity of this identity shift, but it's important to be aware of it. If she's having any physical or emotional issues with her mothering, then try to help out, listen, and reassure her of your ongoing support. It's not uncommon for women to be fiercely protective of the new arrival and not particularly want anyone else to hold or touch the new baby.
The trust that he has with the mum should go both ways, and he probably has to earn that trust. She won't maybe think, oh yeah, of course he'll know what to do. He's been at work all day, he comes home, he's going to do the bathing. Maybe she'll not be confident that he'll pay enough attention to what the baby's doing and not get anything irritating in the baby's eyes and so on. So if you think about a situation which is typical where the mum would have carried the baby, might be breastfeeding the baby, spends more time with the baby, and the dad is off at work and then comes home, it's not surprising that she might think, well, does he really know what to do exactly? And mums are often quite nervous. They've been trying to figure it out themselves. So handing it over to another person, even if it is the father, might seem a big deal.
And again, it's just about being supportive of her wishes in helping her to build trust in herself and in you.
It's possible also that the mother, they tend to be hyper anxious and a little protective, and you have to be absolutely reassuring that you're good with the baby, and you do that with practice.
Many new dads will tell you that it took a little while for their partner to trust them alone with the little one.
We spent a bit of time trying to figure out how to convey this idea of trust with couples. This is an important area, of course, in that the best arrangement is where you trust each other and you back each other up. So it's more than just getting on with each other. It's more than tolerating each other. In the parenting game, the best results for the baby and the child happen when you work as a team who support each other. The steps in building that trust are probably similar to the ones that I mentioned before about building bonding with your baby. And that is, the steps are doing small things. And while you need to stand up for yourself, so you don't want to be continually told you're doing it wrong and that this is the only way to do it, that's often a bit of a contentious point. But nevertheless, you are building trust. And that means doing things in a way that is, I suppose, not tentative, but saying, well, I'm going to try and do it this way, see if it works. You think about settling, feeding, not breastfeeding, obviously, but feeding a new baby. Those sorts of things where you both are figuring it out. You can try your way. And one of the things that we suggest is that dads ask for feedback. So I did it like this. What do you reckon?
In my experience, early parenting is a lot about trial and error.
It's about understanding it's okay to ask for help, that you cannot know what to do. It's not easy having a child coming home. And part of what Tresillian does is give you tips on when a baby cries, what are the cues? What is the baby telling you? So the nurses here will teach the parents, both mother and father, or significant others and grandparents as well, and what is the baby telling you? Is it hungry? Has it got a dirty nappy? Is it tired? And there's signs about, baby rubbing its eyes, or baby making mouthing gestures, when it's hungry, and different things. And so if you're applying the wrong response to that crying, you're just going to get an unsettled baby longer and longer. And the more unsettled they become, the harder it is to bring them back to being a calmer position. So I think my tips would be about reaching out early, not leaving it to a crisis point, because you get to the point where it takes longer to get back to that period where you have a really good relationship happening with a child and having something where you're really enjoying it. We want people to really enjoy fatherhood. Anyway, I'm talking about fatherhood. We want them to enjoy it and not fear it. And there's little things that you just are unaware of as a new father about how it could be easier.
It's about communicating with your partner about what she's learned while you're not there, and then working together to try different things and seeing how they land with your baby. It's all just a learning process, and you get to know pretty quickly what your baby prefers.
That face-to-face contact where possible, and it's just little things. We have examples of where we have baby carriers, you wear the backpack and, it straps onto the front and the baby's looking forward, and that's really good. But you couldn't do that all day. The child sort of doesn't know where they are. They need that facial connection as well. So little things like that are important.
Get to know the sounds of your baby crying. While it may sound silly to say, there are several different types of cry, and each of them means something different. The cry of a hungry baby is not the same as that of a tired baby. Work out some sleep and settling hacks. There are a couple of superb videos on the resources page for this. For my son, it was slowly stroking his brow to get him off to sleep. And when nothing else worked to settle him, we used to hold him in our arms, sway him and say things like, shh, 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 shh. This worked very well for us. Your attachment can also be accelerated by chatting to them softly when you're holding them or changing their nappy, or when you're giving them a bath. You can hum or sing to them. And it doesn't matter if you can't sing, the words don't actually matter, just as long as it's got a melody. Make up anything. Every baby I've ever met also loves big eyes and big mouth. There's also some parenting ideas in the resources section to give you infinite tips to choose from. Take what serves and ignore the rest. Remember, with a little bit of practice, it will all come together, and just when you work it out, things will change, and then you'll be trialling new hacks.
Don't worry if you don't get it right each day. Don't worry if things happen that you wished hadn't happened, because you're just a normal human being and those things will happen in a normal life.
They may even be going through a developmental leap. And if you don't know what that means yet, then the resources page is again your friend. You really just get better and better at working out what works for them.
If you take 2-year-old children and you ask mums and dads to teach them something and you video them, and then you follow those children up. If you get other researchers who weren't involved in the filming to code those videos, and they're coding the videos to say, when this dad's trying to teach this child, for example, a 2-year-old, to thread beads on a string, something like that, do they show the child and then harass them until they get it? Do they let the child figure it out? Do they support them in what they're doing? That sort of teaching where you encourage and give them a bit of space and show them and then sit back. If that's the sort of teaching you do as a dad, then those children, when they're 7 years old, 8 years old to 10 years old, they will do better.
If you are the breadwinning parent, have you thought about how you'll make the time to bond with the little one? Are there specific times that you can spend one-on-one? Are there any specific tasks you can do? Whether it's a Saturday morning pram walk or burping after feeding, anything you can do to be close to them is building your attachment with your child.
We can just clearly see and demonstrate how important it is to have that safe, secure attachment for the child. We know with their brain still developing in those, the first 2,000 days of life, as we keep talking about at the moment, is crucial to the development of the brain, and the brain is still being wired long after the child is born. Like it's still developing its synapses and that as well. And so that safe, secure attachment allows a child to explore safely, so they can reach out and go explore things and come back to their parent. Children that don't have that attachment are very subdued, don't grow, and their mind isn't developing at the same rate as another child that would have that safe attachment to allow for that exploration.
We dads also have a knack for putting baby to sleep, so try your hand at that, and pretty soon you'll be an expert. You're probably going to need a healthy dose of patience and understanding.
Patience will definitely get developed through this process. If you're not patient now, you will be patient soon, which is a great thing. And I guess a third bit of advice is pick your battles, hey? Like a lot of things, doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to argue if the dishes aren't done. You don't need to argue if, the groceries weren't purchased on time. Or, if your day doesn't go to plan, just let it go. There's bigger things in life. Don't let those little things tick you off. Just let them go down by the wayside, and just keep a big picture of things. You're a family. You've got a wife or a partner. You've got a beautiful child. Take that as a blessing, and don't take the other things too seriously. Look through the right lens, I should call it.
Some things may take longer than you'd hoped. At first, even leaving the house is a mission. Your baby will have its own preferences, its likes and dislikes. You've just got to learn what they are. You might be frazzled from lack of sleep and the baby just won't go down. There's really no point in getting upset or angry, because that's highly likely to exacerbate the situation. Just like adults, babies pick up on your energy. So if you're frustrated, they'll feel it. And then it will be harder for you to put them down. Then you'll get even more frazzled.
I always show my parents the normal distribution curve for baby temperament. You've got at one end, you've got the self-soother. This is the baby, your neighbour's baby who went sleeping through the night from the day they got him home, right through to the other end, where you've got these super sensitive babies who will not go on their own into a cot or into a pram or a carrier. They don't mind carriers, but as long as they're in contact with someone, they're contented, but only just. And they seem to need feeding all the time, and they seem to need nurturing all the time. The settling of babies depends obviously on the temperament of the baby. Some babies are easy to settle, and some babies are really, really hard to settle. But generally speaking, in the first 8 to 12 weeks, if you replicate life in the womb, that is, you hold them snug and contain So I'm into swaddling and hold, because that's what babies are used to. And if you hold them nice and snugly, and you pat them at maternal heart rate, and you sing to them, and you stay calm, and you don't take it personally if they're noisy, because sometimes, as long as babies are still crying, and you're doing your best, it's fine. They're not coming to any harm.
If you employ a sense of curiosity about it all, you're on the right track. What is your baby trying to say to you? I'm cold, I'm tired, feed me. Or it could even be, just hold me for a bit, Dad. You're warm and I feel safe. Don't put me down, please. If you let yourself get agitated, their message to you will not be clear. It will most likely be frazzled. Obviously, this is easier said than done, but if you cast your mind back to the hormones video and remember your oxytap, start applying it to the little one and see what happens. And of course, if you care a lot from the beginning of pregnancy, then you will have lots of prolactin and oxytocin and less testosterone to help you. We want to close out this video by providing a snapshot of what the research says about the value of dads. Kids with involved and engaged dads thrive in comparison to those without a male role model. Countless studies have concluded that kids with dads who actively care for them have the following outcomes: better mental and physical health, higher school grades, better cognitive and social skills, higher self-esteem, fewer behavioural problems, increased stress tolerance, lower risky behaviour such as drugs or sex or accidents. The evidence also shows that loving your kids has a huge impact on your health too. Dads enjoy better mental and physical health, better life satisfaction, they live longer and have less sickness, they drink less alcohol and they don't use substances as much, they have fewer accidents, and they are more involved in their community. In the next video, we'll take a reality check on the first 12 months of baby's life. We'll draw on research to show that the transition to fatherhood can be rough. We'll share statistics about birth, relationships, and dad's health to give you a heads up about what's to come.